business sector in Hong Kong, in some ways, failed themselves in that they didn't produce the right kind of people that could articulate their views in Hong Kong's political scene, in the Legislative Council. Why do you think they didn't do that?
I think simply because the constitutional structure that we had in terms of the functional constituency and in terms of the dual system voting and any changes within LegCo require 2/3 majority, so that, you know, with 60 members, if 21 members did not support any changes in the constitutional or LegCo structure, that you were at a standstill. So, I mean, there was a thinking, and I'm going back, 10, 12 years ago, that so long as they can protect that 21 seats, that they would be able to maintain the current system. But I think the miscalculation was really the aspiration of the people of Hong Kong, their expectation, and all along, they've been brought up, to believe that at some stage or other, the entire LegCo would be directly elected. So I guess, complacency, just not interested in politics, too hard a call, whatever. There was a whole, probably a whole bunch of reasons.
The business sector is not representing the people of Hong Kong.
The business sector are representing a section of the people in Hong Kong.
Their own people.
Well, maybe not. I mean, their own people, obviously people, all of us in some ways or other work for either somebody or ourselves. So, if you work for somebody, you may or may not share the political belief of that individual either, or the company or the boss or whoever. So,
But then, skeptics would say, the business sector, it doesn't need any representation in the Legislative Council because whatever the business sector wants, it gets from the government, and there is this business-government collusion.
I think that is a serious exaggeration.
You don't think there's collusion?
Anybody that knows the government process, from sale of land to, even getting a beach house on one of our beaches, goes through such a rigorous sort of tendering process that collusion is not easy. I mean, you take the recent example of an allegation that Kowloon Wharf the wharf company got a renewal or an extension of the ocean terminal at a bargain price. Anybody that knows the valuation process and the fact that, as an applicant, you can appeal against a valuation, all the comparables are looked at, etc., will know that it is, well nigh impossible. And in fact, with the advent of the ICAC and all the process, most, if not all, of us that do anything that has anything to do with the public, not just government sector or public sector or NGOs, go to the ICAC and say, look, listen, this is what we want to do. This is our process. Can you please look at it and see whether we have missed a step, just to avoid any allegations of either collusion or we've forgotten one important step. So I'm glad I have this opportunity of bringing that out. So I think from that perspective, certainly sitting where I'm sitting, not just as an ExCo member, but really as someone over the years that have had a lot of dealings, both in the public and private sector, there is a sense of frustration sometimes that the process is overly complicated.
So it's the other way around.
It could be the other way around.
There's no collusion. You believe there's no collusion whatsoever. That's not the widespread feeling, though, Mr. Arnoldi.
No, I agree. I mean,
people think there's total collusion.
I'm pretty sure that when some of our friends, the Democrats with a small d, started talking about government and
But it's not only that. It's this Donald
collusion.
Tsang riding in yachts and planes. That didn't help.
It didn't help. But that is not as bad as it may seem, okay? In the sense that, where in the world do you have a head of government that doesn't do something like this? And, I'm pretty sure that as far as they're concerned, they certainly don't even think about the fact that it's wrong, simply because whatever they do is so transparent. There was absolutely no attempt.
Well, Ronald Reagan used to mix with all rich friends in Hollywood and so on, and that did happen. So I agree with you in that other leaders do the same thing, but somehow Donald Tsang seems to be very unlucky in that he was caught out this way.
I think part of the reason is the current mood of Hong Kong. Obviously with the financial crisis in 2008. We're still very lucky that our unemployment rate is extremely low, bordering on the point of full employment. But clearly, there are still concerns.
This mood is what I want to talk to you about. The political mood in Hong Kong has changed, and it's not only the financial situation, people's expectations. Does that worry you? Are we getting too carried away, too far ahead of ourselves?
No, I think any leader in government, and indeed any government, owes it to the people, to itself, to try and get the right mood of the people. Now, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's easy for me sitting here to say it, but it's not easy to actually do it on a day-to-day, on an almost hourly basis. As you know, we have a very active media. Something happens somewhere else in the world, we're expected to give a reaction straight away. Something happens in Asia, we're expected to give, and so on.
So would you say the government failed in capturing the mood of Hong Kong people? Donald Tsang said as much to a certain extent.
I think in some ways, I wouldn't like to use the word failed, but what I'm really saying is that when you are in government, particularly when you're a minister and so on, you would like to spend the bulk of your time actually doing your work, as opposed to dealing with the public aspect.
But public mood is the most important thing in politics.
I agree. So I think in terms of the government going forward, I mean that probably is going to be one of the challenges going forward. How do you actually have enough time to do the work, to do the thinking, to do the consultation, to pick people's brains, come to a conclusion and decision, try and sell it, and at the same time keep moving with the public mood at the same time.
Do you think Siwa Leung can do that?
Well, I think he should be experienced enough to know that will be one of the challenges. I'll give you one example about the referendum. The public mood was definitely in favor of the bill that ultimately was passed.
To disallow legislative council to resign.
To bring in some measure.
To run again.
To prevent that from happening again. The bill came to LegCo 2 years after, by which time everybody forgot about it.
That's correct.
Other priorities, etc., and all that. And that allowed the
filibuster to go
filibustering, as a bit of a tactic, come other things. So that's one of the challenges as a government.
Well, tell me this: many people say that they are nervous or uncomfortable with the leadership of Siwa Leung. Are you uncomfortable?
I think people say that, partly because, and I've heard this, that they feel that although they've known him for some time,
they don't really know him.
They don't know him.
Do you know him? You've known him for many years. Do you know him? You sit next to each other or at the same table in EXCO?
I certainly know him better than quite a lot of people.
But do you know him?
Because of that. Do I know his how do I say, his philosophical or approach to life? Not really.
Do you know,
until the election this time, then it's all sort of laid out.
Is he a chameleon like Anson Chan and others say?
I don't know.
Do you find him to be a chameleon?
I really can't say so. But the definition of him as a chameleon came about simply because of his reaction to the 4th of June when it happened, and his reaction today, and that was over 20 years ago. Now. Some of us, in fact most of us, may not have had that shift.
But you don't know him really as a person.
People will say, Michael, do you know Ron Arcully? You've known me for a long time.
But you work closely with Siwa Leung.
That's not the issue. The issue is that when you work as an EXCO member, you can really do two things. You look at government policies and initiatives that are brought to us. Alternatively, if there are things that we think should be put on the table for discussion, we can raise those issues. Right now, different people have different styles of doing things. You know, for all I know, before I went into EXCO, my only experience of CLI was working with him in the provisional LegCo for a couple of years. Now, at that stage, everybody knew everybody because we're all legislators in that sense.
But only in that sense.
But also, during that period of time, it was quite a turbulent time politically for Hong Kong. As you remember, in terms of the constitutional reform that didn't go through, and you know, those of us that sat on both bodies, the provisional legislature as well as LegCo itself, were, you know, being ferried backwards and forwards.
I've got just a couple minutes left here. Siwa Leung refuses to comment on the mainland dissident who died, and